Sneeze Boy is back. What kind of demon invasion do you think his dreams are going to predict this time? Bigfoots? Klingons? Chupacabras? Or maybe Ganon, because this video is called The Legend of Zelda Proves God is Real. Now, I haven't watched even 1 second of this video yet. I'm just assuming based on the title that it's going to be hilarious.
All praises to the Most High and His beloved Son forever and ever.
All praises to the golden goddesses and the Triforce.
The Legend of Zelda proves that God is real.
Full disclosure, before I get very far into this, I haven't played all that much Zelda. I've played some of Ocarina of Time and some of Link's Awakening on the Game Boy. So at 7th Powerable, if you bring up any stuff from Zelda lore, I'm just going to have to take your word on most of it. Not all of it, but most of it. Doesn't really matter anyway. I'm fairly confident that even if I accept that the games are exactly as you say they are, they're still not going to form any coherent argument for God's existence. But I'd better not jump to conclusions. Go ahead.
2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 5. Casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. I started this video off with this verse because once you do this, you start to look at things differently.
Yeah, that's what I like to refer to as putting on your God goggles. I'll add that to my checklist of things to do once you've convinced me that this random video game proves God. But first, I need to actually take a look at your arguments without the God goggles, because those things have a tendency to really badly distort everything.
I want to take the messages from the Legend of Zelda series, the messages hidden in these games connect very well with the Bible.
Okay, that's certainly possible. Bible stories are pretty well known all over the world, and Japanese people sometimes have the same kind of fascination with what they see as exotic Western religion and culture that Westerners have with Eastern ones. It'd make a lot of sense for some Christian themes to be included into the mix of Zelda, especially considering that the game also includes European-style castles, swords, shields, and so on.
Although this game has a religion of the golden goddesses, the Triforce, Zelda officially was meant to be a Christian game.
No, it wasn't. It seems that with all the cross imagery and that promotional art that you're showing on the screen, Christianity did originally feature as a religion in the game. Maybe even the primary or only religion, possibly. But that doesn't make it a Christian game. There's a difference between a game with a religion being featured in it and a game that's meant to push that religion. A Christian game is like Bible adventures.
This is the artwork that was released for the first Zelda game.
No, it was released to promote Link to the Past. That's the 3rd Zelda game. Literally took me 10 seconds on Google, dude.
It depicts Link kneeling before a crucifix.
Yeah, and apparently that's an official Japanese promo image for the game, although it's hard to find the original source. I'm just going to assume that the good people over at the Zelda Wikia are into this game enough to have actually bothered to confirm it themselves, because whatever, it doesn't matter. Good enough.
Now, before I continue, no one should worship idols. No one should bow down to idols.
Oh, so you're saying that based on this promo image, The Legend of Zelda didn't feature your version of Christianity, it featured an incorrect idol-worshipping version of Christianity. Well, that's interesting.
The Book of Magic in the game resembles the depiction of the holy book of Christianity, the Bible. It has a cross on its cover. This is because the Japanese version of the game actually called this item the Bible.
Yeah, it sure did. I like the image you chose from Legends of Localization. You see how at the bottom there it cuts off and it says, "This isn't necessarily for promoting Christianity or anything." Well, here's how that continues on the Legends of Localization website. Japanese entertainment often blindly grabs religious and cultural stuff, foreign stuff especially, to suit its needs without much care about underlying meanings. That's why Japanese games are often full of random religious stuff that makes little sense in context, or why some games have you basically defeat God as a final or secret boss. That's also why stuff like this is common in Japan. Culturally sensitive localizers will usually pick up on these things and try to steer them in the proper direction, such as this, which is maybe what happened here with Zelda. Still, I find it interesting that NOA, I assume that's Nintendo of America, didn't like the Bible reference, but had no problem with the crosses on the shields you carry around with you for 100% of the game. Maybe they didn't change the reference for religious reasons, but because it's silly to think the Bible has the power to make magic wands start fires.
In the game, right before the entrance to the desert palace, Link, he'll find a tablet. And if you read by using the book of Mordura, it tells him to pray to open the door. He then draws a cross on his chest. The sanctuary was intended to be a church.
Well, now I feel better. I was kind of worried coming into this video not being a Zelda expert, but it's pretty obvious now that you're not either. Good gameplay tips straight out of Wikia, though. When I finally play the first Zelda game, Link to the Past, I'll remember to read the book of Mordura to get into the Desert Palace.
In my opinion, the Legend of Zelda series, the main character, Link, represent King David, because you have a young man who had accomplished many great feats, many great tasks, and had awesome adventures with the Spirit of the Lord.
Can't get more clear than that. He's young, he has adventures. How could that possibly not refer to David?
Aren't you a mite puny to go up against Ganon?
I'll do all right.
That's the spirit.
What you unbelievers have to understand, that there is nothing new under the sun. All these movie, books, video games, it has already been done.
In this case specifically, a young man who does great feats and has adventures has already been done. Yes. You figured that out all by yourself?
The Bible is a record of things, of great stories evolving the holy men and women of God, the prophets, the heroes, the servants, the disciples.
Alright. So are we getting to the proof of God bit of the video soon? Or did we already pass it? Link has adventures, one and only one character in the Bible also had adventures, and Link was originally a Christian, maybe kinda? Therefore, God. There's quite a bit of this video left. I really hope you use it to craft a different argument.
All these movies and games, even though you twist the storyline around, make it, you know what I'm saying, like, it's already been done. The events of the Bible, the stories from the Bible, are the salt and the light of the earth. All of them are dominant. They are all dominant stories that were true.
Lots of movies and games have a generic hero narrative at the core, and so do some Bible stories. And Bible stories have a lot of cultural influence and also are true, which you can be sure is true because I put a lot of emphasis on the word true.
That were true.
And therefore, what again? I must have missed that part.
David was a great instrumentalist.
Alright, never mind. Moving on, apparently.
God blessed even his music. When he played the harp to King Saul, it cast out the demon that was in Saul.
Yeah, because you see, Saul dutifully obeyed God's orders to, quote, "Go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass." But Saul, he was a bad guy. He genocided all the people to fuck like a good boy, but he let his people keep some of the animals instead of obliterating absolutely everything that moved. So God sent an evil spirit to torment him for his insolence. God's got a big old boner for murder over stuff that some no longer alive people did some 400 years previous, but taking war booty, that's a step too far. So Saul felt like he had to relax, so he found someone who could play nice music, which happened to be David, and that helped get the evil spirit out. Doesn't really seem to have mattered much who played the music as long as they could play it real nice.
Just like how the Legend of Zelda, the series Link, his instruments have spiritual properties to it.
It seems like the only real link here between Link and David is that they both have instruments, but alright, sure. Can I just pretend that I actually believe the designers of Zelda knew and cared enough about the Bible to bother to base Link on David, and pretend that you've presented adequate evidence that they actually did? Because frankly, whether Link represents David or not has absolutely no relevance to the question, which is the existence of God.
In Ocarina of Time, you have Zelda's lullaby,
Thanks.
Sarah's song, Sun's song, Song of Time, Song of Storms, etc. This connects with King David's ability to manipulate music for God's will. 1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 23. And it came to pass when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, that David took an harp and played with his hand. So Saul was refreshed and was well and the evil spirit departed from him.
I'll pretend for the sake of argument that this was because David specifically was playing it, and not just because the music made Saul chill out. So, I don't recall anything in Ocarina of Time that implies that it's especially relevant that it's Link as opposed to anyone else playing the ocarina. It seems like the instrument itself is what actually has the power. And beyond that, none of the songs have the function of removing evil spirits from people. So where's the actual link to the story of David here, other than that the two characters both have instruments and music does something?
It's already been done. All these stories, it has already been done. The Bible holds record of it. Records.
You haven't seen the last of me!
There's nothing new under the sun.
Dude, I get it, okay? A lot of modern stories take inspiration from Bible stories. That's just to be expected when stories reach a certain level of popularity. It's the same reason so many stories copy Shakespeare. But you've given me no reason to think there's significant biblical influence in this story specifically. And more importantly, you've given me no reason to think that copying a story from the Bible would imply that the Bible is true.
Now let's look at this cover from the Legend of Zelda game. This is the first Legend of Zelda game. This is the cover for the first Legend of Zelda.
What nonsense. Everyone knows the first Zelda game was called Link to the Past.
The lion represents David's tribe, the Lion of Judah.
Whatever I see, I shall devour.
It could. Or the artist might have just noticed that like half the coats of arms in Europe have a lion rampant, and so they just threw it in to amp up the Euro-ness. I'm not saying you're definitely wrong, I'm just saying you got a really long way to go to back this up. And I glanced forward, so I know you don't bother going any further than you already have.
The heart represents the heart of King David, a man after God's own heart.
Uh-huh. Yeah, interesting. Or, and I know this is pretty out there, so bear with me, it might represent the hearts that are in the actual game. You know, the hearts that represent life due to the heart's close association with life. Sorry, you're right. That's crazy talk.
The key represents the key of David.
Yeah. Oh, or it might represent, like, just a normal key, because the game has a lot of keys in it. I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep saying such stupid things.
Link is David. You just have to bring every thought to the obedience of Christ so you can see the messages, so you can see the glory of God in all things.
Worst advice ever. Always take off your God goggles before gaming, kids. It's for your own safety. Otherwise, just like 7th Powerable here, one day you might snap out of a prolonged trance and realize that you've just spent an entire week hunting for any scrap of Christian symbolism in a Japanese fantasy game to prove the Bible, and that you've pissed yourself because it's been a week.
The Lord hath sought him a man after his own heart. David is a man after God's own heart. In the game, in all the Legend of Zelda series, you need hearts for your health. You have 2 hearts in this cover. To me, the 2 hearts represent David and God, because David is the only man after God's own heart.
That's really great that it represents that. To you. It's fantastic, but when hearts are a key part of the game and hearts are shown on the cover art, it's just kind of a strange conclusion to jump to.
The key on this cover represents the key of David. Isaiah chapter 22 verse 22. And the key of the house of David will I lay upon his shoulder. So he shall open and none shall shut, and he shall shut and none shall open. Jesus has the key of David. But we don't, the key of David to me has always been a mystery. Most people don't know what the key of David is. That relates to the fact in every Zelda game, in order for you to open a certain locked door, you have to solve a puzzle. You have to solve a mystery to find the key needed to open a door. Mostly when you're in a dungeon. You got to go through some maze.
You better talk fast.
Go all the way left and move the rock. This key opens the gate.
So to sum up, you have to find your way through a maze or solve a puzzle to find keys in Zelda. Therefore, for some reason, Zelda's keys must be a reference to the fact that people find a Bible passage about a key confusingly written, which I guess you could describe as a puzzle or just bad writing. Ignore the fact that said passage is not actually about someone solving a puzzle or going through a maze to find a key, and it's certainly not about David doing anything, which once again calls into question your assertion that Link is in fact David, because Link goes through a maze and solves a puzzle to get the key, which has nothing to do with David.
Let's move on to the Triforce. The Triforce, to me, this symbol represents King David's name.
You could have just said it represents the Trinity. It's practically begging for you to. But alright, for some reason the Triforce, an object of ultimate power, is named after David, who is also Link. This sounds weird already.
This is what David's name looked like in ancient Hebrew. Now there is a so-called Star of David that has two triangles representing David's name in Hebrew. It's two triangles. That's what the so-called Star of David is.
Oh, I see. So the Triforce wasn't given the name of David, it is the name of David.
I don't like this star because it's demonic. Witches use the star for evil, for conjuring.
Oh, that was good. We have made evil. Let's bring the darkness down.
I'm not going anywhere near that. Just move on.
But when you look at the Triforce, what do you see? You see two triangles, just like in David's name.
What? No. You see three triangles, three separately usable objects in the games. The Triforce of Power, the Triforce of Wisdom, and the Triforce of Courage, each one representing one of the three golden goddesses. And then these triangles are arranged into a single larger triangle.
One is upside down and one is standing upright.
Yeah, I get what you mean. If you take the outer triangle as one, and then the negative space between the three inner triangles as another one, sure. But that's not the intention. You can see as much just by looking at the outlines on the image you showed. Each inner triangle is outlined all the way around in gold.
Link is David.
Have it your way, Link is David, or Jesus, or Krishna for all it matters.
That old Ganon's no match for the king.
Let's talk about Navi, the four-winged creature that is always by Link. These fairies represent the cherubim of the Bible. Ezekiel chapter 10 verse 21. Each had 4 faces and 4 wings, and under their wings was what looked like human hands.
So what you're telling me is you're seeing Navi with 4 faces and human hands. You feeling all right, man?
This is a small description of the cherubim. If you want to learn more about the cherubim, what they look like, read the book of Ezekiel. I'm just pointing out that the cherubim have 4 wings, just like Navi does.
Okay, you're pointing that out, and you're ignoring everything else about them that even you said. But I'll take your advice and read more about them from Ezekiel. So as Ezekiel 10 says after the description you mentioned in verse 20, "This is the living creature that I saw under the God of Israel by the river of Chebar." Whatever. "And I knew that they were the cherubims." So what did he see by the river? That refers to Ezekiel 1, and here's some of its description of these cherubim. "They had the likeness of a man, and every one had 4 faces, and every one had 4 wings. And their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass. And they had the hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides, and they 4 had their faces and their wings. Their wings were joined one to another, they turned not when they went every one straight forward. As for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of a man, and the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. They 4 also had the face of an eagle. Thus were their faces, and their wings were stretched upward, 2 wings of every one were joined one to another, and 2 covered their bodies." Cherubim! Dude, if Navi's meant to represent one of these things at all, she has to be the worst symbolism I've ever seen. And why would King David have an annoying, squeaky cherubim companion anyway? Like, where's that in the Bible?
In a dream, the Lord confirmed to me what was always around me, that I'm always seeing every day. In a dream, the Lord showed me cherubims. They have 4 wings, and they look just like, from afar, they look just like Navi from the Legend of Zelda, having 4 wings with a ball of light or an aura of light.
I am so glad you decided to tell us about your dreams. I was waiting for that after last time. So, these Navi cherubim that you see, do you ever dream about them fighting the gray alien demons? Maybe with King David in a Link costume riding one and shooting krakens with Triforce lasers? I will not be convinced God exists unless that was your dream.
I see cherubims every day. It's a blessing. Glory to God.
Look, however tempting it might be, I'm not going to make a joke about how you're crazy, because dreaming about weird stuff doesn't make you crazy. Believing that everything you dream about is real, on the other hand, no, I'm not doing it.
If you look at the Russian icons of Luke, the disciples, you can see the cherubim having 4 wings right next to the prophet. The prophet.
We're free. You saved us. Here's a life heart.
Yeah, what you showed in those pictures just now were not 4-winged cherubim. The first picture of Luke shows a winged ox beside Luke, which is the symbol of Luke. It's not a cherub, and if you can count to 4, you can tell that it doesn't have 4 wings. The second picture is of St. John, and next to him is an eagle, which is his symbol, as well as a distinctly 2-winged angel with an 8-pointed halo. The image is called John the Evangelist in silence, which should have been a hint to you as to why John is depicted with Christ the Blessed Silence, which has 2 wings and is not a cherub, it's Jesus. So do you have any of these that actually show anyone with a cherub? And if so, is there one with David specifically? Because that's the relevant point here. And if there is, does his cherub look anything remotely like Navi? And does David have a stupid floppy green hat? Anyway, at this point in the video, you talk about how Link has a shield, and David mentioned a shield once, and then mostly you just repeat yourself until the end. And I just realized you have a part 2 as well, and I want to touch on one minor thing from that before the end, because I know I'm not going to do a part 2 of this myself. So here's one more line from your part 1 before I switch to part 2.
Link is King David. I don't care what nobody says.
You dare defy me?
Yeah, that's kind of your core problem, isn't it? It's why you're incapable of critically evaluating even a single one of your ridiculous opinions. Because you throw away every outside opinion instantly without even considering it. It's the ultimate echo chamber. You know how every time you talk about atheists, you say we're too prideful?
Drop your pride. That is the main problem with unbelievers. That is the main issue of unbelievers. You have too much pride.
Well, what do you think might be an appropriate word to describe a person who insists that he's always right, only he can be right, and everyone else must be wrong, even if he refuses to find out what they think or what their reasons are for thinking it? I can think of at least one.
Guess again, Iron Knuckle.
The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. The whole game, you're playing Link, but he's dead. Link in the game in the beginning died prematurely in the Lost Woods. You can go to Game Theory and they do a great breakdown of this fact that Link is actually dead the whole time in the game in Majora's Mask.
That's just great that you found a fan theory that you find interesting, but that doesn't mean that is the plot of the game. Here, I'll let Game Theory explain it to you directly from the video you took this theory from.
Ultimately though, dead or not, the reason this game is so incredible is that it's bigger than itself. It's symbolic of much larger and mature topics, allowing for any number of interpretations really, and in a lot of ways, the gamer sees what the gamer most wants to see in this sort of game. And that's what happens when you try to interpret a work of art. What you're left with is, at best, just a theory. A game!
Is this the
you
one?
Know you can
Can
join
I
me
say
on
it this time?
one. Now is the... Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Good. A game theory.
I love that little bit of audio. I think it sums up most of the problems with your whole outlook on this whole thing. You found a few things that with a bit of twisting and bending and maybe just a little bit of breaking can be made to fit more or less with what you want to see. And then you've thrown out all other possible interpretations, all other information, and you've insisted that your interpretations are fact and fully intended by the game's designer. Look, if you like the idea that Link is supposed to represent David, that's fine. Hell, for all I know, maybe that was their intention. Although I think you need to take a broader view of things to firmly establish that and not just cherry-pick minutia and ignore everything else. To take your preferred interpretations as absolute fact is a little bit silly, especially when one of those interpretations is taken straight from game theory, who, in the process of telling you the interpretation, tells you directly that it's not established fact. But it's on a whole other level to take those interpretations of a video game and pretend that it proves the existence of God.
So the Hero of Time, this same link from Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, died and became a Starforce. The reason why he looks like this skeleton is because he became a Starforce. Starforce, if you die in the Lost Woods, you become like that. So this is Link from Ocarina and Majora's Mask. To me, this represents the cross.
How? Because he died in the woods and crosses are made of wood? Or what? Dude, this is a stretch even for you.
As it is written, Matthew chapter 10, verse 38. And he that taketh not his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. This is the reality of a true Christian. To take your cross is to die daily, is dying to the world. That is why Link from Ocarina of Time and Majora Mask look like this in Twilight Princess.
Okay, I guess I can see how a weird skeleton could represent dying daily, but I'm still not clear on the cross bit.
Now, of course, if someone has been a servant of the Lord and he or she passes away, Lord willing, they will get a glorified body in heaven.
For the dead shall rise, and the living shall be their slaves.
To me, this is symbolic. You know, the whole skeleton look represent death. Jesus died for our sins. Therefore, the cross represent his death, and the cross represent a true Christian's death of this world spiritually, having nothing to do with it and its ways.
Alright, I think I'm done here. At this point, you just sound like a kid trying to convince his ultra-Christian mom that the game with the evil skeleton isn't satanic. It's actually all about Jesus, Mom. You should let me play it during Bible study.
He that taketh not his cross and follow after Jesus is not worthy of him. That is the truth, the hard truth and bitter truth. This is the truth that all men have to accept.
Please, your omnipotence, have mercy.
After you've scrubbed all the floors in Hyrule, then we can talk about mercy.
The Legend of Zelda proves that God is real.
Well, I have no clue how any of this was supposed to prove God. I guess the main point was that lots of stuff takes inspiration from Bible stories, and if a story's popular and it inspires other stories, that somehow means the story has to be true. I think that's the point, but it's hard for me to understand how anyone could possibly buy that as an argument. But it is a good demonstration of just how bad faith can fuck with your head. Hey, Seventh Powerable, you remember how you said that the promo art for Link to the Past showed idol worship? But wasn't the argument in this video basically something is true if it's popular enough for Nintendo to put it into their game? In that case, isn't that the one true Christianity and you should start kneeling before crucifixes? Whatever, please remember to thumb up the video, that helps a lot, and subscribe, and if you like my stuff, consider supporting me on Patreon like all these great people on the screen, and I will see you next time when we learn how Okami's Shinto symbolism proves Amaterasu is real.